This is Future Sense Now, where we explore the landscape and byways of our shared futures. Future Sense Now is brought to you by the Futures Forum. Stay tuned for a journey to the futures of women with host Dr. Claire Nelson.
Greetings and welcome to Future Sense Now, edition 2018. It's an online edition of the Futures Forum. It is March 2018. We're celebrating Women's History Month with an exploration into the future history of women. We're voicing Herstory for 2030 and beyond. So 2030, as you might know, is the year when the UN SDG Goal 5 speaks specifically to the development and inclusion of women. Now, a year ago, we started off January 2017. Women around the world marched to protest the new narrative being embodied by Trumpism and started the hashtag #MeToo movement. And women futurists are saying they see this trend of women seeking elected leadership and starting their own organizations and businesses increasing. In this segment, I will speak to Tanja Hichert, who is the founder of Hichert and Associates, a strategic foresight practice in Cape Town, South Africa. She is specializing in scenario planning, horizon scanning, risk management, as well as facilitating strategic conversations that provide clarity and direction for organizations faced with complexity and uncertainty. She's also a research associate at Stellenbosch University Center for Complex System in Transition and serves on the board of the Association of Professional Futurists. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Tanja Hichert and invite her to share with me some of her prognoses on the futures of women that are emerging for 2030 and beyond. Welcome to Future Sense Now, Tanja. How are you? I'm pleased you could join us.
Hello, Claire. Thank you very much. It's such a privilege to be here and to be part of your endeavor. So I'm very well. Let's talk about the role of women and women in futures. Go ahead.
Well, you know that the UN is attempting to do another feat of supposed global social engineering, right? And there are 17 and many goals. So when you hear this grand goal, however, we resolve between now and 2030 to end poverty and hunger everywhere, to combat inequalities and so on and so on. What is your response as a starting point?
I don't want to start completely negatively, Claire, but I have to be honest and say, I'm sometimes a little bit skeptical because I worry that people kind of think it's all sorted out, it's all planned, you know, that some smart folk have gotten together and figured out that if we press these buttons and measure these things and have those targets, it'll all sort itself out by 2030. And what makes this kind of thinking dangerous, in my opinion, is the fact that we didn't do too badly on the Millennium Development Goals, because there's been a tremendous amount of progress and human development happening. But I must be honest, I really, really worry because the huge, enormous challenges that are being looked at and the issues that we're grappling with are very interconnected. They're very, very complex. There are no easy answers to them. We need new ways of thinking. We need new ways of doing. And so I sometimes worry a little bit and tend to be a little bit skeptical that people might think there's a recipe or a silver bullet or some answers thought up by some smart people, because, you know, it really does not work that way.
Exactly. So you thought about new ways of thinking. So, you know, we see a lot of films about dystopian futures. And one of the questions I have been asked, and I continue asking myself, let's say we do have more women achieve leadership and more women are able to have decision-making participation in political and economic life and public life. Do you think that women's style of leadership will be able to resolve, to create some of the conditions that are necessary then for addressing these complex challenges?
Absolutely. And I want to actually take it further than just women's style of leadership. Because again, I'm a little bit nervous of generalizing that there is a specific kind of women's leadership. You know, Claire, I think there are many, many different styles of leadership, and maybe it's even individuals that have styles of leadership. The point that I think is important is we need much more of different styles of leadership, women's included, you know, whether that is a certain brand or not. And for me, very strongly, it's the different types and ways of thinking. And so the work that I've been involved in, which incidentally is all a bunch of wonderful women, is at yeah, I'm lucky.
Yeah, you're lucky. But you know, I think about this idea of women's style of leadership. Your organization, you're also a member and co-founder of this group called Foresight for Development platform, which I believe focuses on African futures, right?
Yeah.
And so when you look at complex systems, and this part of the work you do, look at the future of Africa, how do you look at complex systems and foresight, and how do you now tie in a gender perspective, given that there are some, let's say, traditional gender perspectives, and in fact, various African tribes have different gender perspectives. Have you been able to identify, from a gender perspective, certain African tribes that allowed a gender perspective to sort of be equally valid in some way, that we can now borrow from these old practices and meld them with what's new? Have you come across anything in this form?
My work, you're asking a very difficult question, because again, you know, I wish there were answers in there. All I can say is that adding a complexity perspective and an African perspective to the type of work we're doing, which is futures and complexity oriented, means we look at different ways of doing things. And this means very different from a white male decision-making hierarchical perspective. And there are some really amazing models and ways of doing, and some of them come from history. You know, and historically, we have African traditions like the Lekgotla, where everybody has a voice. Everybody in a circle has a voice, contributes to looking at how to approach and best resolve issues.
Yeah, may I ask you to repeat that word and spell it for me?
Oh, sure. It is Lekgotla, L-E-K-G. O-T.
So it has a sound in it, Lekgotla.
Lekgotla.
Lekgotla. Oh,
yeah.
And what is that from the Xhosa?
No, it's in different. It's a word that's used in many different languages. Mostly in the Sesotho language, but it's become a general word in South Africa. So you know, even white guys might go to a meeting and call it a Lekgotla if it is the type of meeting where everybody's voice is heard.
Wow, I really like that. So let's vibe on a little bit, this idea of everybody's voicing heard. Now, again, as you said, there's no one woman style of leadership when you think about it. That's kind of really being another kind of stereotype we don't really want to start to advance. So I'd like to examine that idea a little bit more, this idea of Lekgotla. We said we wouldn't generalize that there's one woman style of leadership that's so better than others. In fact, women's style of leadership have more come to the fore as more women have taken on leadership, because before the missed the practice as the same as men when they were the only woman, the only prime minister, the only minister, for example. They had to be more on the masculine side. But as we look at these various traumas, such as climate change, or access to water, access to energy, some of the things that women will have to deal with in our emerging future. Do you think that this idea that giving more people voice in the decision making, especially because we have the tools to do it, do you think that this is something that could pick up steam and become more commonly practiced, and then hopefully spread from South Africa into other places?
Yes, it has to. And look, it's not just South Africa. It absolutely has to. And because and I'm not an expert on psychology at all, make no mistake, but I think women think in different ways and perhaps act in different ways, especially when there's crisis. And I think there has been some psychological research that says that in difficult times and when stress levels are high, men tend to fight or flight, and women don't do that. Women, it's tend and befriend, because yeah. So women often, if you have small infants, you can't fight or flight. If there's crisis, we tend to one another and we befriend and we draw closer together. And I think it's that kind of thinking, together with thinking differently and doing differently, and very often looking at historical examples of how human beings have coped, and not throwing it out and thinking that there is some kind of plutocratic modern neoliberalist worldview of how things should be done.
Yes.
So there you are. I am, again, I'm deeply lucky and privileged to be working in a situation where we concentrate and look for little bright spots, emerging seeds of how to do things differently and how we'll be able to cope differently. Given that we've got these, I call them planetary level crises that we need.
So almost looking for, as you say, seeds of optimism to see a more positive future, as opposed to focusing on what's not working, focusing on those opportunities that are working. So as you think about the various global challenges in creating our shared future and women's role, for example, if you had to pick one major global thing that you would like to say, we have to solve this one or else we're all, doomed, which one would you address and why?
Oh my word, now you've got me on the spot.
Of course, since you're in Cape Town, you might very well say water.
No, we're not doing too badly, to be honest. We've changed our behaviors, which is quite amazing. What's the one big no, we now have enough water to last us through until July. By that time, it'll definitely start raining again. And as I said, we've changed our behaviors. So the big crisis is, I'm going to riff on that, Claire, and say I think the one big thing that I'd like to see changed is that we as human beings actually learn, and not sort of, no, really, not just sort of fall from one crisis to another crisis. Because trust me, what has happened in Cape Town with the water is sure as hell going to happen in another city before very long. Whether it's Mexico City in Mexico, or whether it's London in the UK, or whether it's one of the California cities, what has happened in Cape Town, I mean, it's happening in Nairobi right now, but people are not talking about it because it's not in the headlines. Yes. So we need a systemic learning, a systemic way of working that encourages us to operate differently, especially given the crises that we're needing to face coming at us.
So as we draw to a close, this interview to a close, tell me if you'd like to share a headline story from the year 2030 and how women are faring. Something obviously you'd like to see.
I'd like to see. It would be, I guess, the headline story is women's ways of thinking and dealing with problems help show us how to cope with planetary boundaries.
Planetary boundaries. I think I'm gonna have to ask you to explain that one.
Oh, sorry, I hope I wasn't being jargonish. Planetary boundaries, it really comes out of this wonderful work that I think has been done by...
the planetary boundaries, I heard you wrong. Okay. Yes, so planetary boundaries, yes, yes, yes. That's good. Exactly. Because those are not going to go away in a time. In other words, 2030 is not the end of it. It's just the beginning of a new phase.
Yes.
So are you optimistic about that headline, pessimistic or neutralistic?
I guess I'm optimistic. I reckon we'll get there, but I think we'll probably get there by making more mistakes and having more crises than we currently have. Because, truly, the Trumps and the white male privileged way of thinking, and the rich getting richer, those guys are fighting. Those systems are fighting back. They're not just going to, roll over and show their bellies and say, okay, we don't cope anymore.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm a lot about the headline, but I'm a bit pessimistic. It's going to need a lot of dedication and a lot of perseverance and a lot of courage of convictions to really go out and live differently and show that things can work in a completely different way. But Claire, again, I'm lucky. I get to mix with a whole lot of people that are doing, including some really amazing men that are doing this and living this every day. So yeah.
So that makes you optimistic overall, despite.
Yep. But not without a fight.
Thank you so much, Tanja Hichert, for taking the time to speak with me on Future Sense Now 2018, where we explore salient ideas for sustainable futures. Thank you.
You are most welcome, Claire. Good luck with the rest of it all and have a wonderful day there.
So friends, we have come to the end of a great conversation, but the story goes on, written by all of us. Creating the future we want is our shared responsibility. Remember, it is better for us to act as the parent of our future than the child of our past. So seize the day, and as we say in Jamaica, walk good. Safe journeys.
Thank you, Claire. You are wonderful.
You have been listening to Future Sense Now with Dr. Claire Nelson, brought to you by the Futures Forum. For more, please visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Thank you for listening. Spread the word. Share the future.